Yeah, how you think about yourself. How you think about yourself, how you feel about yourself. Yes, your opinion of yourself. If you thought about somebody else that you respect or somebody that you admire, how would you approach that person, or how would you speak to them? You would speak to them like with some level of respect and honor. So how do you honor yourself? How do you respect yourself? I'm trying. Tell Jamila that she needs to actually join the group. I don't think she joined. I think this is the problem. Okay, so um, I want to give you 5 points, 5 suggestions, okay, from the Quran about raising self-esteem. And these things are really based upon like some of my experience in seeing how different cultures, Muslims from different cultures, whether they're from East or West Africa, or whether they're from Arab cultures or Asian cultures, how those people express their sense of self-esteem or self-value. Okay. And I've had an opportunity to kind of compare us to, I mean, us as American Muslims to other cultures. And so I just want to kind of reflect on that. And there's 5 points, like I said, that I want to bring to talk about that and to focus on that, how we can uh, build self-esteem. If we have low self-esteem, how we can raise it, or how we can maintain it, or even make it higher. And it's not about thinking that we're better than anyone else, right? Because the Prophet ﷺ said that inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. That the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is that who is the most fearing of Allah, or the most aware of Allah. So therefore, it's not about being better than anyone else. It's really about having a healthy respect for oneself. So the first issue is knowing where you come from, your lineage, your background, knowing the people that you came from, who they are, and what greatness from them that is in you. And I've noticed that Muslims from different cultures, that this is a big deal for them. Like family lineage is a big deal. Well, my father did this, or my grandfather did that, or my ancestors came from this place, and we have the Islamic practice in our culture, our Islamic culture, of having a laqab, what we call a laqab, that is like the nasab, or the connecting oneself to that lineage. So you're like, so like for example, Al-Andalusi, he's so and so, Sheikh so and so Al-Andalusi, or he's Sheikh so and so Al-Jazairi, like connecting to that land or that tribe, right? And this is a very old practice of the Muslims, to be connected to your people that you come from. Okay, I know that in our culture as American Muslims, especially, um, yeah, white and black, really. Everyone has like in their ethnic group some heroes or some people that they revere from the past. It might be George Washington, or Betsy Ross, or it might be Dr. Martin Luther King, or Malcolm X, or Harriet Tubman. And that's good. That's fine. That's wonderful to connect to those people and to remember them, but they're not necessarily from your family. They're not necessarily, part of your genetic line, right? So it's who are the people that I actually come from, and how do I connect to connect myself to the greatness that is in them. Come, oh no. Okay, I'll try. Khair. So I know for myself, it was very meaningful for me, right, to get into my family history. One of my mother's cousins did some research on our family lineage and found that, you know, our family, the Braxtons and the Mangens, that they, you know, we were, our great grandparents came from an independent black town in Staten Island, New York, called the Sandy Grounds, and that town was settled after, you know, people who had been slaves in the South. After the Civil War in the 1870s, 1880s, they moved to this place, and all they had was each other and the land, and they built homes, they built a school, a church. They farmed the land, they raised animals, and they took care of each other as families. Yeah. So, and they lived like that successfully for 80 years until the 60s, when the economy changed, and they had their own economy as well. The men used to go out to the shore, and they would collect oysters, and that was a big part of their economy. Subhanallah. Okay, hold on. Okay. And so for me, that tells me that I come from a people who are resilient, who are brilliantly resilient, because all they had was the land and each other, but they built a whole town and a whole economy, mashallah. So I know that that's something that I have in me, as a part genetically in me. You see what I'm saying? And so I think a lot of times when, you know, when I've seen like going overseas, like a lot of people want to go overseas, a lot of people want to live in the Muslim lands, and you have to understand that people in the Muslim lands know who they are. They know where they're coming from. They know their family history. And I remember when I was working in when I was working in Medina, the all the girls that used to come into the classroom, right? Every girl that came in the room would go through the same routine. I had students that were like in their 20s. They were like college age. And each girl that came in the room, they had the same routine. They would come in, they take off their abaya, fold it up neatly. Every single girl had a big bottle of perfume in her purse. So they would come in, they take off their abaya, they would fold it up neatly, put it in the corner. Then they would take the perfume, it was always 3 squirts. Sit down with their back straight, and they're ready, right? And it was this very big thing about sitting with your back straight and walking with your back straight, for the women and the men. Nobody slouches, nobody's looking down. Everybody is, their back is straight, and they're looking, you know, straight forward with their head held up. And that says a lot about how a person feels about themselves. And so I remember one day I was meeting a sister from England. She was like Jamaican British sister, and I was meeting her at the school. I was meeting her after school, in the school lobby, you know, at dismissal. So I mean, this is in Qatar, so all of the women are wearing all black. Everybody's in all black. Most women were wearing face veil, niqab. And so I'm like, okay, how am I gonna know this sister? Because I'd never met her before. So I'm like, how am I gonna know her? And all of the women in the lobby were sitting with their backs straight up, with their legs together or crossed, except one. Step 1. This lady was sitting with her legs wide open and her elbows on her knees like she was an umpire in a baseball game. Okay? And that's how I knew who she was. That's how I knew who she was. So posture, the posture says a lot about what we think of ourselves or how we're presenting ourselves to the world. How are we showing up? Says a lot. So subhanallah, knowing who you are. A lot of times if a person has a low sense of self-esteem and they come face to face with someone who has a high sense of self-respect, they will really interpret that as that person is arrogant. That person is full of themselves. And it may not be that. It may not be that. You see? Okay, so your family lineage, knowing your and finding the greatness in your family lineage and making that a part of you. That, I think, is number one for me in terms of building self-esteem. Number two, you're going to need your mushaf. If you have it, if you have a mushaf, surah al-Israa. Surah al-Israa. Okay, so if you're in Quran in my heart, you know the middle surah, the middle point of the Quran is al-Kahf. So right before al-Kahf, I don't know. Right before al-Kahf is al-Israa. That's surah 17. The ayah is 23. And I'm going to show you two words. And this is a rule in Islam. So it's surah Isra, is surah number 17. I'm going to fit it over here. Okay, here's the phrase. بر الوالدين. بر الوالدين. بر الوالدين. بر الوالدين. جزاك الله خير. So the ayah goes, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Your Lord has decreed that you should worship none but Him. Your Lord has decreed that you should worship none but Him and be good to your parents. Be good to your parents. Okay, the ayah we're on is from Surah al-Israa. That's Surah number 17, ayah 23, in which Allah said, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Your Lord has decreed that you should worship none but Him and be good to your parents. إِمَّا يَبْلُغَنَّ أَحَدَهُمَا أَوْ كِلَاهُمَا الْكِبَرَ فَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا وَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ. If one or both of them reach old age, don't insult them or don't be annoyed with them. Don't say uff. وَقُولُوا لَهُمَا قَوْلًا كَرِيمًا, and always say a noble word to them. Okay, so what does this have to do with self-esteem? بِرُّ الْوَالِدَيْنِ. What does it have to do with self-esteem? Wallah al-Azim. Your parents, our parents, are the people that we come from. We come from them. If we don't feel okay with or pleased with our parents, the people that we come from, then we're going to have a problem with ourselves. If you're telling a story that my mom abused me, my father abandoned me, my mother was on drugs, or my father was in jail, he never did anything for us, or my mom was always... If you're telling these stories, please, I beg you to stop. Change your story. Change your story. You can tell a story from any perspective you want. You know that? You can tell a story from any perspective that you choose. This is your story. These are your parents. Let me show you another ayah. Let me show you what is required of the believer. In surah al-Ahqaf, I'm not sure what number it is. Al-Ahqaf. I want to show you what is required. Al-Ahqaf, of how we are, what we do towards our parents as believers. Okay, Surah Ahqaf. I'm sorry, I don't know the number. Can someone find the number of Surah Al-Ahqaf? And the ayah is 100. No, I'm sorry. The ayah is 15. The ayah is 15. So we're in Surah Al-Ahqaf. The ayah is 15. Ayah 15. And I want to show you this to be clear on what is required. And I also did another video on this specifically about bir al-walidaini and specific things that's required for goodness to the parents. But in this ayah, Allah says, وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ إِحْسَانًا. Allah said, we have advised human beings to be good to their parents. حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ كُرْهًا وَوَضَعَتْهُ كُرْهًا. And it talks about, the mother and how she labored from the time she conceived to the time she gave birth and weaned is like 30 months. And then when the child reaches maturity, there's a dua there. There's a dua there. Jazakallah khair. Surah 46. There's a dua there that the grown child who's a believer, who's grown, because when you're grown, you see your parents in a different light. When you're small, you just love your parents. Oh, I love my mommy and my daddy, right? Without any conditions. As a child, when you start to get older, you start to see your parents as real people. You start to see them for who they are. So then it becomes a decision. It becomes a decision to honor them, to obey them, to be thankful to them, and if need be, to forgive them. Okay? I don't know if that worked. So, in this ayah, in Surah Al-Ahqaf, Jazakallah khair, Surah number 46, the ayah 15. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. In this ayah, Allah says, we've ordered human beings to be good to their parents, and then goes through how the mother labored to give birth, and then breastfeed and wean the child. And then when the child is grown, this is what he says. ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي. ربي أوزعني أن أشكر. أن أشكر. Allow me to be thankful for the blessings that you gave to me and to my parents. أن أعمل صالحا ترضاه أصلح لي في ذريتي. And that I do good deeds that you're pleased with and make me better or give me righteous children. There's hope in that, you know, because you can do better through your own children, bi'idhnillah, right? Anything that you see that maybe your parents missed, you know, with you, you can fill in that gap with your children, yeah? So we have to be thankful to our parents. If you're having a problem with your parents, if you feel like your parents, one of your parent, your mother or your father, wasn't a good person, you know, it just wasn't a good person, you have to find something good. You have to find something good about your mother and something good about your father and harp on that thing. My mother was a craftswoman. She was very good with her hands. She was good at sewing and crafts, and she would make blankets and quilts, and that was something that she was really good at. And so that's what I remember her for. That's what I remember my mom for. Not for the things that went wrong. I forgive her for those. I forgive my mother completely for those things. And I'm thankful to her. I'm thankful to her. The same with my father. I didn't see my father that much when I was growing up because he was in the army and he was away, he was traveling. But he was pursuing his dreams. He was making something of his life. To where now you would never know that my father used to be a criminal. You would never know that now because he's such a good citizen and he always helps his family, and he's very hardworking and a very good example. And you know, if he hadn't been doing the things that he did when he was younger, he wouldn't be the man he is today. So I completely forgive him and appreciate him. So you find something good. You could sit down with your grandmother and say, you know, tell me something good about my dad, or tell me something good about my mom. Go through the family albums. What did my dad used to do when he was in school? You know, what kind of person was he? Find something good. Find something good about your parents. Okay, this is very important, because if you have a low opinion of your parents, either one of them, then this is going to take your self-esteem down, because they are the people that you come from. So if you have a problem with them, then you have a problem with you. Khair. So the dua is there in surah al-Ahqaf, the dua for our parents. Oh Allah, I'm going to put it in the group in Arabic and English. Oh Allah, make me thankful for the blessings that you gave to me and to my parents. Khair. Okay, so next, the third point, or the third suggestion of how to raise self-esteem for the Muslimah is to learn the names of Allah and the attributes of Allah and apply them to your life. Learn the names and attributes of Allah, the asma' wa sifat, and apply them to your life. So what do I mean? I mean, for example, whatever we might be struggling with. Let's say a person is struggling in their relationships, whether it be parent to child or spouse or co-workers or friends, somehow struggling in relationships with people, right? So one of Allah's names is as-sabur. As-sabur. Allah is patient. And we did some research on this name because this name is found in the Sunnah but not in the Quran. And the explanation is that Allah holds off his punishment. He sees us commit sins, he sees us do wrong, disobedient, and he holds off his punishment. Allahu Akbar. He holds off his punishment. He delays his punishment. So we have time to correct ourselves, right? And so we can practice that in our relationships with people, with whether it be children, spouses, co-workers, friends, doesn't matter. We can practice sabr. So there's an ayah which comes in different places in the Quran, which I like for you to learn to say. Okay, it's very easy. Ready? I don't know if I can. Okay, you can listen and repeat. Inna Allaha ma'a as-sabirin. Inna Allaha ma'a as-sabirin. So you know the word inna, indeed. Allah is with the patient. Inna Allaha ma'a as-sabirin. Inna Allaha ma'a as-sabirin. Khair. Okay, so that's one way to incorporate names of Allah. Let's talk about some other ones. Let's say you feel afraid, you want the protection of Allah. We know one of Allah's names is al-Wali. One of Allah's names is al-Wali. He's al-Hafiz. Al-Hafiz. Okay, so a statement you can say, an affirmation, if you will, you could call it an affirmation. Okay, Allahu ahsan al-hafidhin. Allahu ahsan al-hafidhin. Allah is the best of protectors. Allahu ahsanul hafidhin. Allahu ahsanu al-hafidhin. Allah is the best of protectors. Okay, let's say something maybe someone struggling with money, provisions, not having enough. Okay, we know Allah, one of Allah's names is ar-Razzaq. Ar-Razzaq. That Allah is the great provider. So one ayah in surah al-Dhariyat, Allah said, Inna Allaha huwa razzaq. 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 Sometimes we do all that we can physically, mentally do, and then we just put up our hands and submit. Inna Allaha huwa razzaq. Allahu ahsanul hafidhin. Just, okay? So incorporating the names of Allah in our life, in our situation, that will raise your self-esteem. That will make you feel better about your situation, that you're not your situation, you're being tested. Or You're either being tested or you're dealing with the results of what your hands put forth. That's kind of harder to accept. But sometimes that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the results of what our hands put forth. Number 4. Okay. The fourth suggestion about how to raise self-esteem for the Muslimah. The fourth thing is to be feminine. To be feminine as much as possible. To remain soft. As a woman, we are meant to be soft, not hard and fighting and rushing from here to there. Femininity is a science and an art. It's a science and an art. There's a chemistry that is a science. Men, they need adrenaline, right? They're meant to be out fighting bears and lions and catching fish and hunting and doing the things that men do and bringing back the right. And women are meant to be doing the softer things, taking care of the children and maybe growing a garden and taking care of the home and so forth. We're meant to we're designed, okay, to be more soft, more gentle. And we also have a chemistry that needs to be nurtured, because in our society there's a push towards androgyny, where everybody's just the same. Men and women just do the same things. Men and women both go to work. Men and women both pay bills. Men and women both, take care of the kids or cook or whatever. There's this, push towards there's no gender. We're just all the same, and we're not. So, for us as women, what brings us down is if we're constantly in this rush and constantly working and pushing and grinding, as they say. That's not for us to dwell in that for a long period of time. It harms us physically. That's why we have such a high percentage of fibroids and high blood pressure and a lot of these illnesses from stress, from what they call adrenaline. That's a scientific thing, because the men, they need adrenaline. They carry it in their shoulders. You feel a lot on your shoulders. That's the adrenaline. That's why men pat themselves on the back. That helps them. But for us to dwell in that for a long time, no, it harms us. So you have to take deep breaths. Deep breaths. Just slow it down. Everything's okay. Just slow it down. We need that, because otherwise we harm ourselves if we stay there for longer periods of time. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, "Inna khalaqnakum zakaran wa untha." There's a difference between zakar wa untha, masculine and feminine. A huge difference. When Maryam was born, her mother was so surprised. Inni wada'taha untha. I gave birth to a girl. She thought it would be a male that she could dedicate to the service of the place of worship. And she still dedicated to her, but in a different way. And so we know that there's meant to be differences between the males and the females. Distinct differences. So we have to honor those differences. I remember one time I was in Harlem, in uptown Manhattan, on 125th Street, and they had this was years ago, when they had the African vendors that used to be on the street selling different things. And so this African brother, I'm walking down the street and this African brother says to me, do you know Lisa? And I said, Lisa who? When I looked down the street, it was Lisa Bonet walking right towards me, right? This was years ago. And It was winter time. She's wearing like this baby blue winter coat with a white fur collar, and her hair is blowing in the wind. And she walked right towards me, and she goes, "Hello." And I said, "Hello, are you?" I said, "Are you Lisa Bonet?" She said, "Yeah. How are you?" And she was like so nice and so down to earth. And I remember just getting this feeling from her that it was like she was walking through, we're on 125th Street in Harlem, New York, but it was like she was walking through a field of sunflowers. Like she was just so, pleased and I don't know. She was just so pleased. She was just in this world of her own pleasure. And it made her more beautiful in person than she was on TV. And that is really what the essence of femininity is. That there's a pleasure just in being a woman, you know, and it actually makes us more attractive to men. And anyway, that's a whole nother discussion for another day, right? But kind of being in your feminine energy, one of the things that I noticed about being in the Middle East and in Saudi Arabia in particular is that in the Saudi culture, there's so many opportunities for a woman to be seen in all of her beauty. And we don't have that as much in the West, as Muslim women in the West. Okay, when you're covered, and especially if you are going to, if you're wearing the black or you're wearing a niqab, there's not as much opportunity to be seen in all of your beauty. And I don't know if anyone's ever told you this, but it is an emotional need for us as women to be seen. It is an emotional need to be seen. And so what I noticed, like when I was over there, when I first went to Saudi, and I went to visit someone, and they're like, "Oh, take off your abaya, fasakhi." That's what they say, fasakhi. Like, take off your abaya. You're in the house, right? And I was like, "Oh God, I'm wearing a nightgown, and I'm not sure if my hair is combed," because not used to being seen. I wasn't used to being seen. And so as time went on, I got used to visiting people, and then I started going to work. Then it was like every day I was dressed. Like every day I was wearing a blouse and a nice skirt and makeup and accessories, and because there was the opportunity to be seen. That's significant for us. So we have to have some way of being seen by your husband, by your friends. There has to be a space for that, if you can understand what I mean. Khair? All right, so that's another way of building our self-esteem as Muslim women. I think that was number 3? Yeah, that was number 4. So the first one was looking at your family lineage. And lineage is significant. There's a book called Rahiq al-Makhtoum. You may have it on your shelf. Rahiq al-Makhtoum, The Sealed Nectar. And The Sealed Nectar is a book of Islamic history, of the history of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions. The first topic of this book is lineage. The whole entire lineage of the Prophet ﷺ, going back to Ismail ibn Ibrahim. Alayhim assalam. I'll tell you something what happened. When I was teaching in the school, in the Islamic school in Philadelphia, right? I was teaching the kids the lineage of the Prophet. And from Usul al-Thalatha. If you haven't studied Usul al-Thalatha, please, it's highly suggested, okay? For new Muslims, old Muslims, this book is highly suggested. Because the 3 fundamental principles based on the 3 questions that are asked in the grave. Who is your Lord? who's your prophet, and what is your religion. So when the question, who is your prophet, right? It tells just a brief lineage. He's Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib من بني هاشم وبني هاشم من قريش وقريش من العرب والعرب من ذرية إسماعيل ابن إبراهيم الخليل. Right? This is the whole, the abbreviated lineage. So when I was teaching this to so when I was teaching this to the kids in the school, right? They were able to recite it. Then I said, okay, now your homework is to go home and you ask your parents about your own lineage. So I want to know your parents' names. I want to know your grandparents' names, right? So the kids came back. So the kids would come back. Someone would say, I say, what's your dad's name? Abu. What's your grandfather's name? Pop Pop. What's your grandmother's name? What's your grandmother's name? Mom. One little boy, so I could tell them, go back. No, you go back home and you find out your parents' names. I want to know your parents' names. So little by little, they would come back and they would have some names for me, right? But one little boy, he could never find out his father's name. He just said, Abu. So, for me, when I was growing up, the first thing, wallah al-azim, the first thing I learned to read was my family history. It was on the wall. It was on a poster in my auntie's house and in my grandmother's house. There was a poster on the wall of the Mangan family lineage. And so it was Jane and John Mangan. They were my great-grandparents. And then there are 11 kids. One of them, my grandmother, Lorraine. Then under Lorraine's name was all of her children. So I could see my mom's name. And then I could see my name and my brother's name. I said, oh, there's my name, on the wall. And I was like 6 years old. And that was one of the first things that I learned how to read. Okay, so sorry about the background. So yeah, that was one of the first things that I learned how to read. So tell the kids their lineage, tell them where they come from, tell them who their parents and their grandparents are. That's important for their self-esteem. All right, so that was number one, was the lineage. Number two, number two was your parents. Your parents, bir al-walidain, very, very important to find something that you respect and honor in your parents. When we're little, we just love our mommy and daddy unconditionally. When we become adults, we make a decision. We decide, right? And I gave you the dua, the ayah in surah al-Ahqaf, surah number 46. There's a dua. Oh Allah, make me patient, make me thankful for what you blessed me with and what you blessed my parents with. Very important to be thankful to our parents. This will raise your self-esteem, because these are the people that you come from. If you don't like them, how you gonna like yourself? If you don't like the people you come from, seriously, you're fooling yourself to think you have self-love. You're fooling yourself. There's a lot of stuff out there, gimmicks and slogans about self-love. No, self-love is loving the people that you come from. If you can't love them, you respect them and you're thankful. You're thankful to them. That's the minimum. And you find something good. Find something good in your lineage, in the people you come from, in your lineage. Find something good in your parents that you can respect and honor. Number three was the names of Allah. Learning the names and attributes of Allah and making them a part of you, part of your life. So Allah is as-sabur. He's patient. He holds off his punishment. That is something that you might need to do in your relationships. In your relationship with your husband, for example, you might need to hold off your criticism, your judgment, your nagging. Hold off. Inna Allah ma'as sabirin. Allah is with those who are patient. Inna Allah ma'as sabirin. If you feel afraid, unsafe, Allahu ahsan al-hafidhin. Allah is the best of protectors. Allah is waliyul muttaqin. Waliyul muttaqin. He's the wali, the protector of those who fear him. Right? So these are attributes of Allah to kind of incorporate in our mind when we're having different situations. If we're having a money situation, Allah, inna Allah huwa razaq. Allah is ar-razaq. He's the great provider. Okay, so learning the names of Allah and incorporating them. All right, and the fourth thing was be feminine, be soft, be gentle, smell the flowers. Be soft. And this goes into number 5. This goes into number 5, which is all through the Quran, Allah is telling us to ponder His creation. Khalaqallahu samawati wal arda. All through the Quran, the heavens and the earth. Look at the heavens, look at the earth, look at the sky. It has no pillars to hold it up. Look at the birds, how they fly in their formation and they don't fall down. Look at the bees, how they Allah has subhanallah wa bihamdi awhayna, we reveal to the bees how to make this honey. Look at the flowers, look at this, look at that, right? And so when you go out into nature, what happens is nature, because the trees don't care about politics, the wind doesn't care about what President Trump said, the sky, the flowers don't care about racism, the grass does not care. And so when you go out into nature and you find peace, because Allah said mata'an lakum wa li'an'amikum. It's an enjoyment. It's a mata'. It's the rivers and the mountains. This is an enjoyment also for you and for your animals. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. Get the peace of mind. This will also raise self-esteem. Raise the way you feel about yourself. A lot of times when we're inside all the time, especially when we're sitting, we're looking at these, these phones and looking at these, messing with this technology all the time. It's kind of like a feel like closed in. But when you go outside, it's like, that's a freedom in that. I watch the people here. I'm in Michigan now, in Flint, Michigan, and I watch the elderly people here, how pleased they are just to do yard work, just to be out in the yard, cutting grass, clipping their flowers, tending to their little gardens. They're pleased with that. They're happy with that. SubhanAllah, something so simple, that Allah can give us pleasure in those things, and we can also learn from those things, from what we see in the universe. Allah wants us to take lessons, like when you see the change of the day to the night. There's a schedule that's in place there. There's order there, right? And so it's an example to us to have order in our lives, that there's a time to do this and a time to do that. When we look at the ants and how they build their homes and how busy they always are, they always have something to do. When you see ants walking, they're walking with a purpose. They got something going on. They're not lollygagging. They all have a job. They all have a purpose to fulfill. And so there's different examples that we can take like that from Allah's creation. That's why Allah always in the Quran, He said, I will take a smallest mosquito and show you an example from that. I'll take a small mosquito and show you an example from a mosquito, from a ba'uda. You see? So this is what we're supposed to get from being in out, but you have to go out into creation to observe it. This is why the Muslims were the foremost in science. If there's a book and maybe I think a video as well called Alf Wahid Ikhtira, 1001 inventions. And there was a display when I was in Qatar. There was a like a museum kind of display thing for 1001 inventions, and it showed how the early Muslims, how they were the foremost in developing airplanes and developing technology for eyes and for healing the body and the stars, studying the stars and studying the sky and agriculture and medicines. And the Muslims were the first and foremost in science. Why? Because Allah in the Quran tells us to ponder His creation. وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. And look at your own selves. Don't you see? Don't you see? You know, أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ. Don't look at the camel and see how the camel is created? Look at these things. You see? So that's number 5, is if you want to raise your self-esteem, go out into nature, go out into the creation, into Allah's creation, and be in awe of what Allah has created and learn from it and enjoy it. So that is wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So those were the points of those were the points for the Muslimah. 5 suggestions for building or raising self-esteem. I don't want to take too much of your time. It's a beautiful day outside, so I hope you enjoy it. This video will be available on the group if you want to come back to it later. Bi'idhnillah. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.